Hey intro, we are going to move from painting shapes and values into painting realistic things. So I thought a great way to help you reach those goals is to show you some simple techniques for creating distance using mountains and trees. So let's go ahead and start with distant mountains. I'm gonna need a nice damp brush, and I'm gonna go ahead and get my paper a little wet first. So we do a wet into wet. I have some nice tints and shades mixed up already, and I am just gonna wiggle my brush on and off that damp area to create some distant foggy mountains. Now we know from our videos earlier this week that the more blue or white or gray we add to our landscapes, the bigger our distance is going to be, right? So I can use a little bit of water to soften the base of those mountains, and later on we can overlap other things in front of them. Okay, notice that I'm adding more contrast as it comes closer to me, and I would add more texture and detail as well. All right, let's look at a close mountain. So same thing, just gonna get the base of that mountain just a little bit damp. I could also use white paint down there. Okay, I'm gonna use a little darker tone. So I have gray and purple and white. Okay, I'm gonna start with the dark side of my mountain, start where it's wet, do a little wiggly brush stroke up and across the middle. These textures and brush strokes can make it look like rocks. The variation in color gives you good detail in your mountain. I'm gonna rinse my brush. I'm gonna come across with a much lighter value over here, cut back in a little bit. This is like Mount Adams. It has kind of a sprawling right-hand side. I can take some of that darker tone and I can touch it onto the light side of my mountain and give it that scree field or the talus slope. I can come back in with more of my dark. Okay, we've got a nice little mountain there. Careful not to make it too halvesies, right? I could add some more dark on this craggy peak in front. Again, it's damp, so it's gonna blend nicely. It's gonna dry a little darker than we see it right now. You can use that damp brush and kind of scrub and lift. Okay, all right. Now let's look at trees. So distant trees can work a lot like distant mountains. I'm gonna switch and use some blue and gray tones. And again, I'm going to get a little bit of my base wet where I want my trees. And then I'm just gonna use some white and some green and some blue. And I'm gonna do vertical squiggly lines to create these trees. This brush might be a little big for what we're doing, but I can use less pressure. So this would be like a middle ground between our distant mountain and our foreground of like rocky slopes or grass or whatever. Okay, use a little bit of dry brush. And rinse my brush and grab a little darker tone. You can overlap. This is really about like a jagged, vertical brush stroke. There we go. And again, we can soften those bases with a little bit of water or white paint. Okay, once you have your distant trees, you need some close trees, right? I don't want to see any triangular trees, so we are going to use a little bit of a dark value. I did purple and black to get some nice thin trunks going on. Okay, and then I'll come back in and I'll work horizontally now. So we worked vertical for far away and more horizontally for up close. I'm gonna get a little wider towards the base I can go all the way to the ground. I can leave myself a tree trunk. I can add more color and values depending on how full my tree is. But these are just horizontal back and forth brush strokes. Okay, pretty simple. Creates lots of depth and realism.